Hey, welcome back to Timecode Cowboys. I'm Alex Smite.
And I'm Danny Smite.
And we are here to hopefully be entertaining for a little while.
Yes.
Talking about movies.
Also, we just installed some new sounds to my dad's Rodecaster. So this is the Rodecaster Pro from which we do all of our...
Shout out to Rode.
Oh, shout out to Rode.
Mics.
Yeah, the mics, the whole thing. Rode, if you want to sponsor us for anything, just let us know. We're happy to be brand ambassadors. Really would love that, actually.
That would be great.
So yeah, we've got a couple pads here that we've mapped to some sounds. We want to start to bring in some kind of classic radio tags. So we had a bit of a brainstorm this morning about what would be the good sounds to cut away to.
And there's only 8, so there'll be more.
Yeah. So do we want to run through a couple of them?
I think we should just surprise people as we go.
For reference, that's a cowboy whip. We got this one, which is my personal favorite.
She got a great ass, and you got your head all the way up it.
Yeah,
that's from Heat.
That was kind of the tipping point for Al, his career-wise.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, Scent of a Woman. He also was pretty broad in that, but we love him. I mean, I love him for all of his excesses. We have another one here that's kind of a deep cut.
Oh man! Oh God! Oh man! Oh God! Oh man! Oh God! Oh man!
Yeah.
Oh God! Oh man! Oh God!
Cut print.
This is actually the one I meant to cue.
Not for while you can, monkey boy. Not for while you can, monkey boy.
Yes, anybody who recognizes that one, I'm sure there will be people.
Please, hit us up in the DMs.
We'd love it. Well, because we want to talk about that movie.
We do.
But the movie we're here to talk about today is sort of we figured this 70s thing that we started last week is going to turn into, I don't know, like 3 episodes to kind of flesh it out.
Yeah, we don't want to spend too much time in it because
it's not, as I said the other day, it's not that 70s show.
No. I mean, it's again, it was a starting point for us, but we do want to venture further afield. So in the effort of not getting too bogged down, we wanted to cover a kind of predecessor movie, which we did last episode. And if you haven't seen that, please, that's out there. It's great. We covered Lonely Are the Brave. Then this week we wanted to do sort of a quintessential 70s flick, and then maybe one more, and then we're out, and we're going to kind of move on.
Yeah, we already have other things that we're starting to record.
Yeah, some guest episodes, some field trip episodes. And, this is not saying that we won't ever come back to the 70s.
No.
We certainly could.
No, but we don't want to make that our sole focus.
No, for sure.
But that being said,
yes,
last night we watched Vanishing Point together.
Yes.
With my wife, Tammy, and Danny's mom, Tammy.
Yeah, Vanishing
One and
Point.
the same.
1971, Richard Sarafian. Great movie.
Yeah.
Features the 1970 Dodge Challenger. If anyone's a fan of this movie, and even if you're not a fan of the movie, you've probably seen images from the film reproduced
sort of
and repeated.
Iconic picture car.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it gets a bad rap as being sort of a 90-minute advertisement for the Dodge Challenger. It's more than that. Anyway, we watched it last night, revisited that. I think it's kind of boiling down this list of like so many options for 70s films. This was a really important one for both of us because I remember you showing it to me and it being a very kind of impactful film on me for a lot of reasons.
I think for part of that is there's something sort of squishy about it. You can't really put your finger on what the movie's about.
Totally.
Which may not be the best thing in the world, but for me, as like an 11 or 12-year-old when I saw it, it left me thinking there's something maybe that I'm not getting. It's like important.
Yeah.
So it was weightier than I believe it actually is a little bit.
For sure.
But on a visceral level, just as a viewer at that age, the car stuff's amazing. And it's a simple story about a guy, trying to get from A to B as fast as he can. And the law's out there to stop him. We'll get into some of you have to fill in a lot of blanks in terms of what the reasons are.
We were saying before this, it's like, we're still kind of figuring out a format in terms of like when we do focus on one film, how much of it's going to be devoted to just like plot synopsis versus criticism. The last episode, we kind of mixed the two in.
Same. I think that's what happens.
But this is one where the plot is really just paper thin. So we don't even really need to labor the point.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the gentleman who wrote the screenplay. Danny found this book, which I've already ordered, which talk about going deep into a movie. It's like literally everything Vanishing Point.
Yeah, Vanishing Point forever.
There was some kind of, like, especially our screenwriter.
Yeah, I had sort of read on the Wikipedia stub that it was written by a Cuban ex-national, this guy Guillermo Infante, who went by the pseudonym Guillermo Kane or just G. Kane.
Yeah, he's screen credit
for short.
G. Kane, I think.
But they have a lot more detail on him in this particular book. Again, Vanishing Point Forever. Great tome.
That's definitely a labor of love.
Yes, this one's great. I mean, it's essentially a kind of compendium of different critics and people sounding off on the film and talking about its legacy.
Script.
They got the shooting script from Guillermo.
And the strips from the AD, the production schedule, basically.
Plenty of ephemera and old Dodge Challenger ads and playbills from when the film was running at, second or third runs as a double bill, oftentimes paired with like French Connection, which is weird.
Blacktop. Yeah, I know it is weird. We were talking about the French Connection because I think the only thing those two movies have in common are there is a car chase in French Connection, but the rest of that movie is not really about that.
No, not at all. In fact,
somehow it ended up on a double bill, always with Vanishing Point.
Yeah, it was a common sort of pairing, common enough to the point that I think when Tarantino mentions it in his book, Cinema Speculation, he says he saw it as a double bill.
What was the other picture that came out around Drive, he said? Was that George C. Scott?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
There's another George C. Scott driving picture called The Last Run.
Which
they mention in this book.
And that's actually sort of a
cool
similar thing, too.
Well, he apparently was on the short list of, it was Gene Hackman, George C. Scott, and eventually the studio went with this
Barry Newman.
newcomer.
Gene Hackman or George C. Scott? How about Barry Newman? I'm sorry, Bear.
Follows naturally with those two in the same
TV's
sentence.
Del Vecchio.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we're not quite sure what the show title was.
All right, I'm going to find that out for sure. I'm 100% sure that's it.
But. Yeah, anyway, I mean, no shade.
No.
Nothing against Barry. But this gets into an interesting point because the book details a lot about like how the script was a very ambitious, it's almost like mythological journey, an odyssey, if you will.
Yeah.
Except, instead of going back home to Ithaca, he's going headfirst into self-annihilation. It's this modern parable. It has religious overtones, and Guillermo Infante, writing as Guillermo Kane, his pseudonym again, had kind of cooked up this crazy postmodern revisionist Western.
Well, you should go back and give a little context to Guillermo and what his sort of interesting information about him.
Yeah, so he was a Cuban national and was
Petrocelli. I was wrong. It's not Del Vecchio.
Petrocelli. Okay, so Barry Newman ended up in a TV series called Petrocelli.
2 years, 74 to 76.
What was it on?
I'm sure it was NBC or one of the networks.
Anyway, so that's in large part why we think he maybe was kind of anointed with this role, is that he was maybe earmarked for a TV project or something, and they kind of...
his credits leading up to Vanishing Point are Tony Petrocelli and the Lawyer, which sounds like a backdoor pilot, probably a movie of the week, and Get Smart as a guest star. So this was a big break for him.
This was a very big break. But again, we're going to get on to this point of like sort of how the studio interference, even in something seemingly is kind of like what the fuck with the casting, it ends up actually lending itself to a better film. That despite the mess and despite the interference and sort of the death by a thousand cuts that a film in the Hollywood system can sometimes suffer, it actually stands the test of time. Starting with...
I think by almost in spite of itself.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And it made back its money like tenfold.
I'd love
which
to
is
know.
Crazy.
I'm sure it's in there. I'd love
to
know what the production budget was. I mean, in
Slim.
those days, dollars. But I don't
for
think
sure.
It's not a high budget picture.
No, not at all. And I think it had a very robust run. Again, it was the type of thing where
all location. I don't think
all
it's anything
location
on
work.
stage.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't point to a scene that seems like stage work. It's all location work, which again is very
maybe
much...
the inserts, the car, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe they shot those in second unit simultaneously. They had 7 cars, right?
Somewhere between 5 and 8 cars. It is claimed that they went through, which is crazy. For this thing.
Anybody who listened to our first podcast when we were breaking down, it's actually the one that will be before this, The Lonely or the Brave. Both of the lead character in that picture, Kirk Douglas plays, and Barry Newman's character are very similar.
Yeah.
The movies are different, but sort of what happens to them. They're two guys who are both war veterans. They don't talk about it. It's sort of like I was saying earlier to Danny, it's kind of unspoken PTSD when nobody knew what that was really yet.
Right.
what was it, shell shock or whatever they called it.
Yeah.
And they're kind of loners who really don't fit in anywhere. So in Barry's case, he's just taking a job now where he drives cars as fast as he can across country. We don't really explain how that works financially or what the deal is.
Or how somebody who's looking for a Dodge Challenger would be okay with it arriving in the condition that he seems to be.
Yeah, some of the detours he has to
he has no intention of delivering it clearly by the end of the film. But,
certainly not intact.
Yeah. It's beat to shit. So
yeah, but boy, it takes a licking.
It does, but hey, it looks good while doing it, doesn't it? But yeah, no, you're right. The PTSD or the sort of unnamed PTSD factors prominently into the kind of Western trope the revised Western trope, filtered through this late 60s. Even the Seekers,
the John Wayne character,
the Searchers,
the John Wayne character and the Searchers, very similar.
Yeah, for sure.
The Civil War veteran,
for sure,
that had a lot of battle scars.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Not the same man.
Yeah. I guess to close the loop in terms of like its origin, Guillermo Infante, again, we're writing under the pseudonym of G. Kane, was a Cuban national. He supported Castro. The Castro regime was actually briefly jailed when the change of power was happening and was like persecuted by the Batista regime prior to the revolution. And so he had sort of was an evangelist for the new Cuba. And
he was like a cultural minister.
Oh,
or something, correct?
He got appointed a pretty prestigious role at the time as like a editor of Revolution, was sort of a literary mind that supported the revolution until a point he didn't.
Until they didn't want literary people minds around.
Yeah, say what you will about where it went, but yeah, he got disillusioned, and ultimately, I guess his disenchantment sort of precipitated a assignment. He was kind of kicked to the curb a little bit and sent to be a diplomat or emissary in Belgium, because apparently Cuba did have like a small sort of embassy in Belgium.
Or something in Belgium.
And he said in the book here, he says that it's like akin to being sent to Siberia. That he was basically persona non grata. And
the Eastern Front.
Yeah. From Belgium, he jumped over to England, where he began screenwriting, and then from there made it to the States. A lot of people...
And we've found a title that's very interesting, which we're going to watch, called Wonderwall.
Yes,
which he wrote. It looks like a very weird sort of British 60s psychedelic something. But if you watch the trailer, it seems like a peeping Tom professor living next door to a model.
It looks pretty weird.
So we got to watch that for sure.
Jane Birkin and super psychedelic, very like mod swinging London.
Soundtrack by George Harrison and Eric Clapton.
Yeah, who have a lot of history together.
They do.
But yeah, so he's got some weird titles under his belt. That was 68. So he had done that right before he, had sole screenwriting credit on Vanishing Point, which we're talking about today. But I was going to say some people suppose, chief amongst them, Alex Cox, who directed Repo Man.
Love Repo Man.
And is something of a film scholar.
Repo Man.
Repo Man's great, but he's something of a film scholar himself. And he posits that G. Kane was actually being paid to do these screenplays via the CIA, that it was a way of them laundering money to him for being an informant about the Castro regime, which seems kind of like tall tale, but I mean, it does check out in a certain sense, maybe.
Yeah, probably if you follow the breadcrumbs.
For sure. But from what we know, he wrote the script. It got into the hands of 20th Century Fox, and similar to what we talked about episode 1, it seems like, there was a appetite to kind of come out with something that was appealing and pandering to the counterculture. There's a lot of elements of this movie that
they feel jammed in there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. You got your biker, your long-haired bikers. You get your hippie chicks.
It like checks all the boxes.
Completely naked, riding around on motorcycles.
Of course, yeah.
You have the sort of a strange, cultish, religious, semi. I don't know how
something
you would
going
describe
on.
that.
Yeah. There's a whole sequence where you're kind of watching these people, this congregation in the desert, and very bizarre. I mean, and all of these things I think are even more bizarre because they're lifted wholesale from Guillermo Kane's script, and so much of that script actually ended up getting rewritten or dropped or omitted because I guess during the course of the production, the budget was slashed. There was a change in guard at Fox, and their shooting days went from 60 to 40 or something.
So the guess is that a lot of what would have been connective tissue that pulls the story together gets dumped for the car stuff.
Right, which inadvertently makes it a more kind of enigmatic, mysterious film. And again,
this tone poem.
Yes, for sure. And it gets to that point we kind of were touching on in the beginning where it's like, you know, the messiness of it getting kind of put through the motions of the studio system, in which like his script got written and rewritten and pages were dropped and scenes were deleted. It benefits from that in the end, and it actually kind of becomes
weirdly
this,
somehow through all the mess, that's what make it has a certain charm.
Yeah, it does. It has a power.
It's
to
very
it.
watchable.
I
mean, if you haven't seen it, it's a lot of fun to watch. It's a little bit of a time capsule.
100%.
But for those of you young people, when you're watching this, the depiction of sort of the young generation is very cliched.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Again, I mean, I think the word pandering is pretty good here, where it feels like they just kind of were like,
get me my Easy Rider.
But there's a lot going on. And I think, you know, for all of the things that did get kind of, I don't know, omitted or washed out or just sort of left on the cutting room floor, there's a lot of, you know, according to this book, if I take this to be fact, you know, a lot of Guillermo Cain's screenplay was retained in the sort of the bones of this and the arc of it being a kind of mythic journey of a lone character kind of seeking a truth or seeking a home. Again, an odyssey. He's encountering characters along the way. I mean, I'm thinking of Cleavon Little, who plays a DJ.
It's almost like the Greek chorus.
Yes,
the narrator.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. He's commenting on the action and, in fact, is actually helping him out. And, you know.
None of which is, I think, where it's sort of unique in that all of these things that are there for a reason are there's no sharp edges. You don't really get...
Yeah.
The point has to seep in. It doesn't really get thrown at you
right.
in a way you can
Which
follow.
Again is like a combination, I think, of like maybe just budget constraints and the lack of certain scenes to connect things.
Or it's almost like they were trimming it down to like the idea of something.
Yeah.
And like you're really left as an audience.
Yeah, you have to connect.
Fill in a lot
you have
of
to
blanks.
connect a lot of dots. You really do. You have to kind of,
which is not necessarily a bad thing. I don't mind being pushed to have to fill in some blanks. And maybe the movie I see is different from the one somebody else sees.
100%. Which gets again to this point of like Barry Newman actually being perfect casting. I mean, we threw some shade on him episode 1, and a lot is made about the mishigosh of yeah.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Oh, you're just,
but just saying that he's like an empty vessel.
Yeah, well,
but he's like, it's like he has no features. You know,
he doesn't
just fill in the blank.
Yeah, he's just kind of this like, you know, hip dude with hip dude with the Jew fro who's like hanging out with his moccasins or whatever, and like, you know, it's fine.
He has black friends, so he's cool.
Yes, he does. Yeah, they just set it up.
And he buys drugs from.
He gets his bennies from a biker gang, black dude in a biker gang, and you know.
I know they combine like, well, let's not do both scenes. Let's just have the black ID and the biker gang.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. He's a cool cat, man. He's with it. But again, it's like you think of a Gene Hackman or a George C. Scott in that role, and they might have actually crowded it out or eclipsed the film too much. And I think what makes it work is actually that Barry Newman is kind of this.
Well, it would have been a completely.
Yeah,
it would have been a movie about a guy instead of it's a movie that a guy is in.
And he is the perfectly sort of vanilla guy that you can project your meaning onto him, and you can imbue that performance and that person with your own, you know, your own feelings, and it leaves it open as a text in a way that I don't think you would have gotten if you had a Gene Hackman.
No, and I don't
as good as he would have been.
Yeah,
like you know what I mean.
There's something to be said for that.
Yeah,
you know, which is why I think that movie. I still was thinking about it when we started to revisit all those '70s movies. But at that point, I hadn't seen it for I don't know how long.
Yeah, what prompted you to show me this one early on?
Because
I remember it being like
when I saw it, it left an impression on me.
Yeah,
you know, it's like there's something about it that at the end is bleak.
Yeah, right. It's self-immolation, self-annihilation.
Annihilation.
Yeah.
Annihilation would
well, he does go up in flames. So.
He does go up in flames.
Yeah, it's a pretty bleak ending. It's expected in a way because they kind of tease it as like this is his only kind of
the only way out, and really he could just go around the detour that.
Yeah, he could. And there's worth noting there is apparently a deleted scene with Charlotte Rampling that made
Charlotte Zardoz Rampling.
Yes, went on a couple of years later.
Dan, do your Sean Connery from Zardoz.
I work for Zardoz. I'm an executioner for Zardoz.
For Zardoz, I am an exterminator.
Zardoz. Zardoz, which came out a few years later. But she was in the UK cut, and apparently there's a scene where she's like playing this sort of like mythical hitchhiker that Kowalski picks up near the end. Like it's supposed to be a beat before, you know, his decision to kill himself, which is ultimately what he does. And apparently this
They
scene,
don't add up. All those beats don't add up
they
to
don't.
what happened.
Because, you know, we see him moments prior actually attempting to evade the law with that guy who helps him out with the pig pass and gets him the little, you know, the motorbike that he puts on top, and they get through the barricade. So, you know, for somebody that's like seemingly concerned about self-preservation to then pivot and drive headfirst into two bulldozers.
Yeah, it's almost like instinctively he's constantly getting away from the man.
He is. He has to get away from the man, dude. He just has to drive.
Well, that's pretty much all Cleavon Little says throughout the whole thing.
Exactly.
The other actor that we haven't brought up yet, who is my favorite part of the in terms of performance, was Dean Jager.
Oh yeah, he's so good.
Who
you might recognize from White Christmas.
White Christmas.
Yep.
Troops are ready for inspection, sir.
What can you do with a general when he stops being a general?
So good.
Anyways, Dean plays this sort of old desert rat guy that's like catching snakes, and they just stumble on each other. But he really lights up the screen for this. He's only in 2 or 3 scenes, but he brings a lot of energy to it.
He does.
And it's a very quirky performance, like most of his.
Chewing tobacco, salt, flour, and beans. Lots of beans, son.
And I was telling Danny last night, he said he sort of reminds me of that generation's Christopher Walken.
Yeah,
it's
for
that
sure.
Same kind of, you're not quite sure what you're going to get, but it won't be boring.
Yeah, I was actually struck again at how like good he is.
He's really good.
Like in a way that like it's almost
very
like
real.
too good.
Like that's the one character that I think this guy could exist.
Oh, for sure. I mean, down to like his lips have that like he's like all dried out and like he's been in the desert. You believe it. But yeah, again, I mean, you know, it's an interesting kind of.
He's a helpful.
He is helpful.
Stumbles on it. We were saying it's a little bit like "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," which was the Odyssey,
sure.
but it's that same idea.
Right.
You know,
it's taking something that kind of has this like classical structure of like the journey home, the journey to Ithaca, and then kind of inverting it. But according to this book, you know, some of the notes from Guillermo Cain and in his original shooting script, which is actually in here, and I haven't read the entirety of it because again, I only got this book.
And I haven't even gotten my copy.
Yeah, I mean, I skimmed this before.
That is all things. Vanishing Point.
It is again, just you know.
Yeah, that is a book. That is a labor of love.
That's a book right there. But
Thank
they have
whoever wrote that and put it together.
It's great. They have the shooting script in here, which I kind of skimmed through, and it's significantly different.
I noticed that too. I flipped through just a few pages.
Yeah, he's got a lot, but he is a highly visual writer, and there's a lot of instances in here in which he wanted to reference very specific kind of, it gets again to this point of like it being a blender between like ancient mythology, but then also
the
media.
Snakes, I was thinking about that too. That's even more leans into that.
Oh, for sure.
The snakes he's catching, and then the vipers, they release them, they throw them back out into the desert.
Yeah, it's this big like allegory that doesn't quite connect because it.
Well, you know what? You just hit on it. It's like there are all these things that seemingly are going to add up to something, and it doesn't really happen. But that again doesn't make the movie.
No, and I think maybe in his script it does, but because it got so kind of watered down by the time the cameras were rolling.
Pursuit movie.
Exactly, but I think it benefits from the kind of dead ends. It's like the Winchester Mansion where staircases go to nowhere.
yeah.
But it's okay. That's
a good analogy.
It's a vibe. The movie is a vibe.
It is a vibe. And you just have to go with it.
Yeah.
And just kind of, it's fun. You know, it's entertaining. It's not long.
Oh, no. It's a very swift.
It doesn't drag anywhere other than
10 minutes.
There's a lot of B-roll of obviously probably townspeople that they hired to be background. And some interesting stuff, but it gets if there was anything that got overused a little bit, it was like these cutaways to people
especially
waiting for him to drive through their. It's almost like the Tour de France. It's like, you know how people go to the street and watch the peloton zip through and then they go back to work.
Yeah,
everybody kind of wanders out when they know he's going to come through town. So
right. Yeah, it doesn't really make sense, I guess. And yeah, I mean, we could pick at the structure, but actually, overall, I think the editing is really incredible.
It's really well cut.
And we looked up the editor's name, and he actually worked on Harper, which is a Jack Smite movie.
Stephen, now I can't think of his last name. We just found it, but we'll put it in the notes.
Really good. I mean, this is a film that I think the authorship is kind of shared because like it went through sort of all these different.
Yeah, the tech credits are great, except my only complaint was sound because I have a feeling the production dialogue was unusable. It's like it's seemingly every scene has been looped.
Yeah, there's a lot of loop lines,
and it hurts because you know that is never friendly to performance.
No,
And when the whole thing's like that, it's just
Well, there are some dumb loop lines too, literally, where it's like, there's obvious things going on.
Oh yeah,
in
over
camera,
the backs of police
and
officers.
it'll be like, or like in the beginning, I'm thinking where it's like, a really quiet, beautiful kind of slow.
That's
slow
a neat
burn.
opening, very quiet opening.
Yeah, and you're taking your time, you're getting settled into the world, and then like a CBS News truck pulls up, and someone goes, "Hey, what's going on? Well, CBS
this
News
must
is
be
here."
important.
And it's so clearly like a loop line. You're like, what? Like,
Well,
we don't need that.
As we always say, when that happens, we go, paging Mr. Herman.
Yeah.
Paging Mr. Herman.
Yeah, exactly. From Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Yeah. Paging Mr. Herman. Paging Mr. Herman. But hey, you can't. Oh, you got one you want to hit?
That's that's time code moment.
We're getting time cody. We're getting time cody.
Might be too deep. All right.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Not for while you can, monkey boy.
That's absolutely true.
We're still kind of figuring out the tempo of these things. But yeah, I was going to make a point here, and I do want to land this plane because I think it's important. The script being sort of this hodgepodge, this blender, this postmodern revisionist Western, and Guillermo Caine.
Wow, those are all really big. That's impressive.
Well, I'm just trying to restart my memory.
It's a picture. It's a movie.
Hey, listen, man. He was a literary hero, so a lot of this is in the DNA.
You know why a kid?
I know, because you love. But this is why we're a good duo, because I think where one word suffices, I'll use 5, and you will use the word probably. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. He actually has asides in the script specifically mentioning wanting to cut away to like Keystone Cop clips, and obviously they didn't do that in the finished film.
To put some context, so the police are bumbling.
Yes,
in this.
And we mentioned several times, like while watching it last night, we were like, "Man, this is like some Keystone Cop bullshit," where it's like they're just bumbling around.
Or
fumbling.
actually, Tammy made a good point too. She right around that time she went, what would be another interesting road movie would be Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah,
and it's so strangely, it's kind of part Smokey and the Bandit and part like the end of 2001.
Oh
It's like
true. It's kind of it's got this kind of spiritual psychedelic element to it, but again, it's like all these things are kind of tugging at each other and they're not quite in perfect harmony, but that is also what makes the movie
and I think
work.
that goes back to when you were talking about Fox, and it's the studio versus not knowing what the young market is, and then when they sort of throw in these cliched sort of stereotype groups of young people, they feel like it's somebody in an executive suite trying to figure out what like hippies would be like.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, Richard,
and I kind of fancied myself a little bit of a hippie when I think I saw this movie.
Well, I'm sure if you were like actually a hippie and you saw this, you'd be like, oh my God, like what are they even doing?
We talked about this in the first one, and my friend Mark Baldwin and I always joke about we were late to the party.
Right.
We weren't quite old enough to have sort of
you didn't get to enjoy,
exactly. And to be like part of that young, thing. Right. We were mopping up our older brother and sister's party.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I think that was part of the appeal. Ooh, yeah. All right, I'll stop.
Oh, no. That was just like kind of a button on the anecdote. Where were we with Vanishing Point? 1971, Richard Sarafian.
Well, we could talk about some of the performances of some of the guest actors.
Oh, man. Oh, God. Oh, man. Oh, God. Oh, man. Oh, God. Oh, man. Oh, God. Oh, man. Oh, God.
Yeah, I think
there's a little bit of that. No, actually, it's the opposite. It's instead of people chewing the scenery. All right, watch out.
I know, dude. I'm sorry. I keep hitting the speaker.
With some of the performances are so subdued and beyond like real that there's nothing there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think.
That's why not to take anything away from Dean Jager's performance, but that's why I think he literally lights up the screen.
Well, it's funny again, the Charlotte Rampling scene that was deleted, which we have to watch.
We got to watch that. I have a feeling it might be something kind of interesting.
I think so too. But they used her on a lot of the marketing, like her name. Yeah, you're doing it too. You're hitting this.
All right.
I guess we're pretty tight to the desk here. I didn't realize
we're screwing around. We got
also. I should say, I mean,
for our video,
we did a whole take of this, and like. We had 2 cameras set up, and my iPhone just stopped recording. I mean, which makes sense.
We have a new device.
We're going
on the
for
way,
like
a new camera coming on.
Yeah. Anyway, we were pretty disappointed because we had a whole take in the can, and we are like, oh yeah, nailed it. And then
this one's better.
Yeah, this one's better anyway. It's already better. You guys got the better take. You got the better take.
The only problem is the other one only had me.
It was just you. I think if it was just me, we would have been okay.
We would have been. Because I'm kind of like your Ed McMahon.
No, you're like my Hank in the Larry Sanders Show. That's what you. Hey now.
I think I'd rather be Ed.
Hey now.
Hey now.
Yeah. So Vanishing Point is a film that stands on its own merit, though, because I think the fact that it didn't have like star power to draw people in.
No, and I don't think it needed that.
But it makes it last all the more. Like I guess I'm amazed reading this too, just how kind of
better actors though for some of the incidental parts, and I think they cast locals.
Yeah, Cleavon Little was good though.
The question is not when he's going to stop, but who is going to stop him.
And for all he doesn't have a lot to do. Barry Newman's fine.
Yeah, but yeah, it's interesting because it was this like sleeper hit where
it was a cult. Probably an early cult movie.
Yeah, it was for sure. Definition.
It had long legs because it lived in second release.
Yeah,
where they run in double features or in smaller theaters that are
Yeah,
you could always. I remember that too. Like if you missed a movie in its initial run, it would still be running. It would just go somewhere else.
Right. That is something that I know we've talked about, and I think it's like worth maybe giving some more context to that because it's such an abnormal thing in today's media.
There's no second run theaters. There used to be a whole level of theaters in town.
Right.
Yeah, that would run movies that were cheaper for them.
That just took the films that had been out for months.
Yeah, and they'd run them, and that's where I saw a lot of movies like that. There was a place in Santa Monica.
Crazy.
I can't remember the name of it now.
Were the prints like dirty? They'd been run through there.
They'd gone through the ringer a little bit.
Crazy. Yeah.
They don't last forever, and that's where they end up.
Exactly. They end up at these second or third rate houses.
Actually, sidebar, I could tell you a funny story. I worked on Silkwood for a while when they were finishing.
Mike Nichols movie?
Yeah, I assisted Sam Osteen on the airplane cut down, and then I was also helping sign off on color corrected reels for the initial release.
Oh wow.
So one of my jobs was to go to the lab and watch a bunch of reel 8s and pick the perfect one. They wanted to have like 4 perfect prints to go anywhere Mike Nichols might have walked in to see it.
Because he had a tendency to walk into theaters.
Yeah, he wanted it to be. So I had to make sure I put together that many prints of like perfectly timed color prints.
Yeah.
And some of them were terrible. Like reel would be all blue because something would misfire. The light, they used to be much more analog. And I remember after a few days of this, I asked the guy, I go, so what do you guys do with all these? I mean, do you just recycle them or does it become fill? And they went, oh no, they get sent out. They go to like some mall in,
wherever.
Montana.
Yeah.
And I went, really? And they went, yeah. So, and they were pretty bad.
That's unfortunate. But I mean, also kind of tracks with an industry that really does kind of pride itself on like, it's always going to look the best in the towns where there's people that are.
Well, right. Well, now with digital projection, I don't think
there's a consistency anymore. For sure. But I mean, it's fascinating because I do remember even growing up in Valencia, there was that one movie theater that was on Lyons Ave. If you're going towards
that would have been that's the prototype of what would be a second run theater.
And it was really small. And I remember seeing a couple things there.
Or they would divide it into duplex.
Yeah, exactly. It was like 2 theaters and that was it. Yeah. But anyway,
they get inexpensive movies and then
Which, I mean, Vanishing Point was one of these. It was often like run on double bills with, 2-lane Blacktop, or there's one with Peter Fonda, Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry.
Ron Howard or somebody did one of those.
Really?
I don't know if it was that one, but he directed a Corman.
Oh, was that a Corman?
Picture like that. Yeah, and so did Scorsese.
Yeah. I mean, it is fascinating. That's like a whole other kind of topic we could delve into on another episode, is that a lot of the seeds of what made the 70s and the filmmakers that kind of became the cream of the crop in that era cut their teeth in the Corman camp. Richard Sarafian, who directed Vanishing Point, really didn't have much of a career after this. I mean, he worked obviously, but like I couldn't spot anything on his resume that was
a working director.
But prior to this,
and his son Darren went on to be a pretty successful television director and producer.
Yeah, you worked with him.
No, friends of mine did. I met him. I never.
Oh, you just heard about him?
Yeah, seemed like a straight shooting guy. Good
cool.
guy.
Well, there you go. It's all in the fam.
Yeah,
we love a multi-generational story.
We do.
Being multi-generational ourselves. But Sarafian directed the Talking Tina episode of The Twilight Zone.
Yeah, I mean, that's
he had been working in TV and done some iconic stuff, obviously, again, from a sort of level of like, not dissimilar to a Robert Altman who had been working in TV. And
I think that's the same generation.
Yeah, they were friends, actually, which is funny. small world.
My
But
dad's generation, it's all those
exactly
guys
graduating from TV to features. That's kind of proving ground for a lot of these guys, right? That like it feels like they kind of came up either in Corman or on like TV.
Which is why, I mean, you know, Danny,
Yeah.
I think you mentioned this since this is essentially take two, that you already mentioned this about the budget getting slashed.
Yeah.
But, you know, when that happens, it's like you still have to finish your movie. So now what?
Yeah, exactly. They
And
had to
you
figure
need
it
people
out.
to know how to, you know, turn on a dime and figure out the cheaper way to do it, how we can do this in 2 shots instead of 7 shots.
TV's great
So
for
we
that.
could get the movie shot.
I really do feel though.
It's a great training ground for that.
Oh, for sure. And it lends itself to that. But this film, to me, the standouts, like the MVPs are like the editor and John
it's really
Alonzo.
well cut.
John Alonzo, the DP.
A young John Alonzo, apparently, early in his career.
Yeah. Pre-Chinatown, although Chinatown was only a couple years later.
Well, this caught a lot of attention.
Oh, it
visually.
must have. I was going to say, we're going to do a little time code moment here. We're getting time, Cody. We're getting time, Cody.
Hang on.
Okay. I got to shorten those.
You could fade it. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
We got to
it's my
not
fault.
use those a lot either.
No, I love them.
She got a great ass.
Okay.
Oh, you don't like that? I'm done with that one. Okay. All right. Anyway, yeah, we were geeking out because there's some beautiful photography from John Alonzo, where they're following Kowalski in his car, and it's long lens. They're like firing in, and they're just getting little glimpses of him. I mean, they must have just. Yeah, it's super
Very
long
tight.
lens. There's a really good long lens stuff in this.
Yeah,
like,
which is not
for the
easy. It's
chases.
with moving
Yeah.
cars,
Yeah.
trying to keep it in focus. So they must have just rolled forever.
Yeah.
And then, you know,
Yeah.
as an editor, you just sit there and, you know,
Yeah.
just kick back and make some marks where the good pieces are.
Yes. Yeah. You couldn't really JKL key.
As
back
Lasse
then.
Hallström once told me when he was about to start shooting a pilot I cut, he said, I shoot a lot of film. You pick the good parts.
Lasse Hallström, who did the Cider
My
House
life
Rules.
is a dog.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And he shot
I thought in a nutshell, that's
You're like,
the
you're
editing
right,
process. You shoot a lot of film.
Yeah.
I'll pick all the good parts.
It's a nice kind of, very simple way of looking at it. That is in essence what you're doing as an editor.
Yep.
But it is more than that too, because I think
It
in
is.
this case, there is a shape imposed by a
for
lot of the
sure.
choices, right?
It's well cut.
Especially when you're kind of
All
avoiding
the tech credits, I would say, are
top notch.
top notch.
They really
except
do.
for sound.
But
And
again,
dialogue.
that's just
production dialogue, which was all revoiced.
But
or
I guess you can't blame them. They're out in the
loop.
desert.
I
The
can blame 'em.
sound of the Challenger engine is
Yes.
amazing. Like that in and of itself is a character in this film, I think. Like that really,
Yeah,
that
the car
is
is,
incredible.
You know, it's his.
There's a note in
chariot.
here that apparently they, it did go over budget, which again isn't fair
Well, if
because
it
I
was
think
cut in half. then
again over the course of the production things
it
changed.
went over their half of their budget.
Sure. But apparently they spent, a good amount of money and time on just getting the sonics correct of the car and all that stuff. Cause I mean, it is a character, and in many ways, I think Barry Newman's probably overshadowed for 90 minutes by the Dodge Challenger.
Yeah.
This film.
It's definitely a character.
He's sharing screen time with this thing and he's willing. He's a willing participant.
Although I almost felt like the camera and the film itself could have given a little more love to the car itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
you mentioned that.
I could have used some more sexy. Like I wanted to know that car.
Yeah.
Like he does.
Right.
It's like he gets in it and it fits like an old shoe.
Right.
Even though it's not his car. He's
Exactly.
driving it across country.
That
Because
they have a
His character's
relationship.
an ex-race driver. It's a very complicated guy that you get found out. You find this information piecemeal as they find out, as the police find out more about him.
Right.
And then a series of simple flashbacks, which don't come into focus as much as you'd expect them to.
No, yeah, there's kind of this structural device of like them flashing back every once in a while to the character's name is Kowalski, Kowalski's past. We don't know his first name, just Kowalski.
Yeah.
They say what?
They know he was
first name-
discharged from the army, but they don't know
Yeah, they know all these
his
other
name, only his last name.
Yeah, all these other convenient details about him that kind of pop up later on when the
He's a
manhunt-
war hero.
Yep. The
Purple
manhunt
Heart.
begins, and they start sharing these things over the APB, much like they do in Lonely or the Brave. And
Yeah, a lot of similarities.
they're like, unknowns other particulars are unknown. It's like, okay, cool. So that's
I'd
it.
like to keep my particulars unknown.
All right, you and me both, Al.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. I mean, it's a movie that I think probably in its time did not get the recognition it deserved, which is, again, the definition of a cult film. But the fact we're watching it now and it still has impact for me
and
is big.
giant book is sitting in front of you. So
yeah,
we're not the only ones.
No, we're not. Not at all.
But definitely a movie that if you are curious about one of the more, I'm not going to say obscure, but one of the more sort of culty films that come out of that period that have lived to tell the story. I mean, that movie still gets a lot of attention. You know, you can bring that up to a lot of filmmakers and they know it.
It's great. Yeah. I mean, I think the ending stuck with me the most being a kid. I mean, that's something that I distinctly remembered in revisiting it. Because again, I hadn't rewatched this probably since I was 14, 15.
Yeah. And neither had I when I was younger than that.
So last night.
Until I watched it with you. And then again, last night.
Yeah. So I watched this 2 weeks ago and then watched it again with you and my mom, your wife, Tammy, last night. So the three of us sat down and watched it together. And it was interesting to watch it with her because it is very much kind of the movie that has this reputation of being just a total kind of like balls to the wall car chase guys movie.
They're not a lot of even the female characters are very sketched.
It's like
at best.
Yeah, there's nothing there in terms of like feminine presence. I mean, even
but really nobody's fleshed out. None of the characters.
That's true.
Are.
That's a good. That's a
except
good.
for Dean Jager.
That's a good. Dean Jager.
I feel like I know that guy. He's like 2.5 scenes or something.
It's true.
That's
why it stands out. I think is that he's kind of an anomaly in a film that of like very kind of thinly sketched characters.
And even Cleavon, who's our DJ, that's it. He's the DJ. He has nobody really has any.
You kind of get the sense that he's in a relationship with someone
life.
Who's concerned, right? There's that woman who's always standing by the
producer,
glass.
Right? And then there's an engineer.
You don't know for sure. I mean, maybe they're in a relationship.
I know.
You don't know.
She walks him to work.
She walks him to work and his engineer.
He works at a radio station in what I would consider an incredibly small town.
Yes.
It's like dirt streets.
But
somehow he seems to be incredibly influential.
Yeah. It doesn't
cross state lines.
It doesn't quite track.
I don't know if it was supposed to be a pirate radio deal or.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe. I don't know. Yeah. Again, it's one of these things that doesn't quite click with the movie, but at the same time,
it's a plot device.
I don't think it suffers for it.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, in particular, when I saw this the first time, and a lot of these, what themes there are in there, I'm not sure yet, but what themes there are in there went over my head. But it was a cool car movie, and I kind of wanted to know what it was about.
Yeah.
There was something intriguing about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all that matters too is ultimately, for the sake of our podcast, our personal reactions to it. And I was going to say, my mom, having watched this and sat through it quite patiently, enjoyed it. And she was very patient for a movie that is kind of thin on plot and character, and is heavy on the antics. But at the same time, she brought us some good points at the end. We kind of had a little debrief, and she was intrigued by sort of the sweep of the whole thing, but her biggest sticking points for her was she was like, I just don't understand why this character Kowalski, played by Barry Newman, would have killed himself at the end. Like, why did he need to ram his car head first in these bulldozers? And I think that's a valid point. And there's other moments throughout the film where she was like, I wish I had a little more color, a little more insight. But ultimately,
and that was the first viewing for her.
Oh, for sure. And a return viewing for you after many years. Yeah. Whereas I have had a chance to kind of digest it and redigest it, and then now talking about it. I
hadn't seen it for 20 years.
I mean, my line on it now is like, I do think even with all these kind of shortcomings and the messiness of the production and the fact that yes, there are blatant kind of, I don't know. There's pieces to this that were clearly left out, and the film is lacking certain connective tissue, but it's better for it. That's my line on it. Yeah, I think it works.
I like this movie. I would recommend it to people. Yeah. I think some of the pandering to the youth market now really shows its wear.
It shows its wear, but it's also kind of endearing. Like, at least from my perspective, like not having like a real kind of anchor in that time period in my life, only through media and the way it's represented.
Yeah, so
to me, it seems kind of whatever kitschiness or pandering is there, and I don't discount that fact, like it still just kind of feels like a fun time capsule, you know, because it's outlived that initial.
Well, and also it's a world that I didn't know. It's all these people who live like in these weird towns in the middle of the desert.
Right.
There's no,
I mean,
so
it would be
people
great
have left, kind of run away, and they've just
Yeah.
You know,
it's true. It's people
they're
that
all
are off
kind
the
of
grid.
nomadic and off the grid. Everybody.
I wonder how much of that open space is still left. Like, obviously, big swaths of it are just interstate. But we were curious in some of the scenes, especially where they're going through these like kind of podunk towns. It's like, oh, it's there anymore?
Yeah, I know. I think some of them were Route 66.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
but
yeah. There's that one shot at the first kind of car chase when the cops first get on his tail, and it's like the Colorado River.
Yeah,
because
he starts in Boulder.
Yeah, he does start in Boulder. Starts in Boulder, and he's getting to Frisco.
Yeah, that was another thing that it's like, is it a big deal for 2 days to drive from Boulder, Colorado to?
I don't know. I mean,
I don't know.
How would they make this film now, you think? It would just be self-driving cars and he'd be like the one guy with
just actually
a driver?
You could program.
So it would be a bunch
evade police.
Yeah.
Because the cars are all computer now, as according to our president. It's all computer.
Yeah, well, let's not go down that road. Yeah, I mean, they did try to remake it in 1997 with Viggo Mortensen as a TV
which you
movie.
thought may have been a TV movie, right?
I think it was. Yeah.
I don't even know if that would. I like Viggo.
I like Viggo too.
I'd be curious to see that.
Yeah.
Laugh for while you can, monkey boy.
Indeed.
Yes, indeed. Well, what do you remember when you first saw this? Because I remember the summer that you showed this to me, 2003, 2004. It was very, very vividly etched in my mind as being like a summer day. We were inside, like AC was on. Like, I have very distinct memories of our old house up in Santa Clarita, and we popped it in the DVD player, and I kind of felt like it was like some sort of like crazy, secretive, rebellious thing to be watching this movie that was so kind of, I don't know, like
weird.
Yeah,
it is. It's kind of a weird movie.
It's a weird movie, but it's cool.
Yeah, and I think for me, I remember seeing it in the theater, and there's a lot of scope because it's widescreen, and it's also these vistas, these desert vistas. It just felt big, and all the car stuff was insane. It was great.
Yeah. Do you know if you saw it in one of these second or third run places? Probably
Probably not. I would guess I saw that, in Westwood or something when it opened. Yeah, at a first run theater.
Did it have an R rating when it came out? It must have, right? With the nudity.
There's some, it's not, and
gratuitous.
Weirdly, not just topless, but there's one. Yeah, that's a strange scene where he encounters this couple. The guy's cool. He ends up helping him, but he has to leave for a minute and leaves him with his girlfriend, who's like riding around completely naked on a motorcycle.
Hey, I mean, at that point, they're like, let's just throw it in.
Discussion about that.
They're like, let's just throw it in. Like, we need to give the people what they want.
Just let her ride around in circles.
Funny, there's a tidbit about her in here, and she actually went on to like maybe be in one or two things after that, kind of typecast, unfortunately, as the sort of like hippie naked girl.
Chick, yeah.
And then she became a wardrobe designer, had a very, very productive, illustrious career. Yeah. Sarafian kind of dropped off the map. It was an interesting thing to look him up.
Sure. I know. I'll have to drill down a little bit into what he did after this. And
anyway, I guess we should bring this thing in for a landing. This wasn't as bad as I thought. Take two. I was really worried.
It's never fun when you have to do that.
It's
there was a little energy. Not that it's lacking, but
no. I mean, we got plenty of energy for y'all.
And trying not to repeat the same things.
I know, because now I'm
we might as well, if we're going to do it again, let's go down different roads.
Well, I think we did. We kept a good balance. Yeah.
Anyways, I would say if you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth watching. And we'd be curious what people think. I mean, we can be messaged, so let us know.
Yeah. I mean, it's a movie that means a lot to people, and I think it sticks in your mind, right? Like, whether you saw it as an adolescent or whenever, like, it's a perfect symbol, I think.
And any muscle car fans out there would definitely.
Well, I should say the Dodge Challenger in this film, choosing to have it be this particular color white was like, a pretty big deal, because they, that was a new car, and it was kind of known for its more brightly toned poppy colors. Yeah, right. Like, red and lime green, and to go white with it was, I think, an aesthetic choice to have it pop against the desert landscape, but it also is this kind of perfectly, it just becomes this kind of like almost abstracted version of a car.
But the car dealer that sold those cars to the company, like, we need 7 Chargers, Challengers. Okay.
Well, I'm sure they were getting them directly from Dodge at that point. I mean, it's a big ad.
It's a car ad.
I mean, I would want to drive that car after this.
It does get a flat tire.
It does, but he puts it through the ringer.
Yeah,
it
changes the tire.
It withstands a lot. It withstands a
yeah.
lot in this movie.
Well, you said it was RT, road and track.
Yeah, road and track.
Because it definitely goes on the
Challenger
road.
RT. Did you know anyone who had an RT when you were growing up?
Not that I can remember.
Yeah.
No.
Crazy.
It's a cool car, though.
Yeah. The seatbelts weren't as big of a deal back then, huh? They just kind of made the interiors nice and
luckily
roomy.
Ralph Nader took care of that.
Was it Nader?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we want to switch things up. We have a couple guests coming on in the coming weeks, so we'll record those.
We got a really fun one that we're going to do. We got a couple fun ones we're going to record.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Got a couple things up our sleeve. So
we want to get some young filmmaker people that we know, too, that are going to be coming on. So we got a lot planned.
Oh, wait, hold up. I have to say, I wore a cool shirt.
Yeah, and as a Chicago Bears fan, I do not approve of this shirt. For those of you that are watching this, it does say Cowboys on it. I'll leave it at that.
Shout out to Claire Smite. I actually somehow ended up with this shirt. It's hers, but it was in my laundry basket. So I stole this for the day. Shout out Claire Smite.
All
Cowboys.
Right. Woo. All right. So, Dan, you want to take us out?
Yeah. So, thank you. What?
Broadcast.
Oh, yeah. No, I know. Podcasting from the foothills of Mount Wilson. This has been Timecode Cowboys.